My wife secretly bought a $200, $0 luxury cabin with her affair partner, then forged my signature to transfer my share. Now she's claiming I stole from her in our bitter inheritance fight over our parents' estate. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this. Honestly, I thought everything was fine, or at least close enough. My wife, Lisa, seemed like your average, high-maintenance woman who loved her designer bags and fancy vacations. We'd been married for 10 years, and I always believed we had a stable, if slightly tumultuous, relationship. She was sharp, ambitious, and knew how to get what she wanted, usually with a smile or a sharp remark that made everyone else feel small. But I never suspected that beneath all that, she was capable of something so cold, so calculated. It all started about 2 months ago. I noticed small things: her phone ringing late at night, her being distant during conversations, and her sneaking off to the bedroom with her laptop. Nothing too obvious, but enough to make me suspicious. Usually she'd brush it off, say I was imagining things or that I was being paranoid. She tell me I was overreacting, that I did trust her, but I did trust her, or at least I thought I did. Then came the day I found out for sure. I was going through some old emails trying to clear up my inbox when I noticed a strange one from an address I didn't recognize. It was about a property, something called the Summit Cabin, a luxury place worth about $200, $0. The email was from a guy named Brandon, and it was about the purchase. I was confused at first. Why was Lisa emailing about some cabin? But then I saw the kicker. The email included a transfer of funds, a contract, and her signature. My signature. That's when my stomach dropped. I opened our joint bank account, and sure enough, there was a transfer of $200, $0 from our account into her name, with her forging my signature. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'd been working hard for years, building a future, and she was out there buying a cabin with her affair partner and forging my signature to do it. It felt like a punch to the gut. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who kept things steady, and now I was starring at this betrayal, her sneaking around, lying, stealing from me, and covering it all up. I didn't even know where to start. My mind was racing. I thought about confronting her right then and there, but I needed proof, so I started digging. I looked into her phone, her emails, her bank statements again. I found more. A string of secret transactions, messages with Brandon, plans for the cabin. It was all too much. She'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. And she had the nerve to pretend everything was perfect. The worst part, she kept insisting she was innocent, that I was crazy, that Brandon was just a friend. She said she bought the cabin for herself because she deserved a retreat, a place to relax, that I was just jealous or paranoid, but I knew better. This wasn't about a retreat. It was about her betraying me, lying, and stealing from our future. And the fact that she forged my signature, that was the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just an affair anymore. It was her trying to wipe me out financially, to cut me out of everything. I felt numb. Anger bubbled up, but so did a deep, aching sadness. I had trusted her for so long, and she'd been sneaking around behind my back. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she'd planned this. The cabin, the affair, the theft, all of it was part of some twisted plan to cut me out, to start a new life with Brandon. I didn't know what to do at first. I just sat there, staring at the computer screen, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I knew I had to confront her, but how? When I finally gathered enough courage and showed her the evidence, Lisa's face turned cold. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied outright. She said she bought the cabin for herself as a gift, that I was just imagining things, that Brandon was just a friend she was helping out. She called me paranoid, accused me of snooping, and insisted I'd stolen from her in the past, trying to flip the script and make me the villain. That moment was a turning point. I felt a surge of rage, mixed with heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? The woman I thought I knew. The woman I married was a different person, someone capable of betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. It was like my entire world was crumbling, and I was left standing there, betrayed, humiliated, and feeling utterly helpless. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight, walk away, or find some way to get revenge. After that confrontation, everything changed. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, angry, hurt, confused, but also oddly numb. Lisa kept up her act, insisting she was innocent, that I was crazy for thinking she could do something so terrible. She threw in some classic lines, how she needed space, how she was so stressed, and how I was just jealous of her new freedom with Brandon. It was pathetic, really. She was gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate me that way. I spent the next few days trying to process everything. I'd always been the guy who kept his head, who stayed calm in crises, but this was different. It felt like my entire sense of reality was shattered. I kept replaying that email, that forged signature, Brandon's name, everything. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I couldn't just brush this off as a misunderstanding. She had crossed a line that no apology or excuse could fix. I started thinking about what to do next. I knew I couldn't just walk away without some kind of plan. I had to protect myself, my money, and my reputation. I also had to decide whether I wanted to stay and try to fix this or get out and start over. The truth was, I was furious. At Lisa, at Brandon, at myself for not seeing it sooner. But beneath all that anger there was a strange sense of clarity. I realized I needed proof, solid proof, before I made any moves. So I began a careful investigation. I hired a private investigator, someone I found online who specialized in financial crimes and infidelity. I gave him all the evidence I had, screenshots, bank statements, the email, and asked him to dig deeper. I needed to know if she'd done this before, if she'd been planning this for a while, and how deep her lies went. The pie was discreet, professional, and I felt a small sense of relief knowing I had someone on my side. Meanwhile, Lisa kept acting normal, or at least trying to. She went about her day like nothing was wrong, but I noticed her phone was always nearby, her eyes darting around when I asked questions, and her stories about her whereabouts kept changing. I also started noticing small things, her deleting texts, hiding her phone more often, and even sneaking out late at night. It was like she was trying to cover her tracks even more. I didn't need more proof. I already knew she was lying. One night I decided to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I told her I had hired someone to look into the situation and that I knew everything. Her face twisted into a mixture of anger and panic. She started to lie again, about how I was overreacting, that Brandon was just a friend, that she bought the cabin for herself because she needed a break. She even had the nerve to accuse me of being controlling, of spying on her because I didn't trust her. That was the moment I realized she would never admit the truth willingly. I needed to take control. At that point, I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage, not after what I'd found out. It was too late for apologies or explanations. Her lies had gone too far. I was hurt, yes, but also furious. I decided I would divorce her, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. The property, her secret cabin, and the money she stole, these were assets I'd fight for. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, especially not after what she'd done. The next step was to get legal advice. I contacted a lawyer specializing in family and financial law. I wanted to understand my rights, how to handle the property, and how to protect what was legally mine. I also made a plan to get a forensic accountant to trace every penny she'd taken, every shady transaction. I was determined not to let her spin this as her victory. She might think she could lie her way out of it, but I was going to hold her accountable. Throughout all this, I felt a roller coaster of emotions. The initial shock turned into rage, then into a kind of cold resolve. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with this betrayal, by someone I loved, by someone I thought I knew. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how she could lie so effortlessly, and what I'd done wrong to deserve this. But I also knew that dwelling on guilt wouldn't help. I had to focus on getting through this, on protecting myself and my future. The hardest part was the emotional toll. Every time I thought about the cabin, the money, her lies, I felt sick. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her see me break. I had to be the one in control now. I told myself I'd find a way to come out of this stronger, even if it meant losing everything, except my dignity. I was determined not to let her destroy me, even if she thought she already had. This was just the beginning of a long fight, and I was ready to face it. The more I dug into her financial trail, the more I saw how deep her deception went. The private investigator came back with some shocking details. Lisa hadn't just bought the cabin with Brandon. She'd also transferred a significant chunk of our money into offshore accounts under fake names. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. Every move she made was calculated, covering her tracks, hiding her assets, and lying through her teeth. I felt like I was in a nightmare, but I knew I had to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't help me get what I needed. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her bank statements, copies of forged signatures, and recordings of her evasive answers. I knew I needed to act fast. I reached out to my lawyer, who advised me to file for an emergency injunction to freeze her accounts and prevent her from transferring any more money. It was a blow to her, I could tell. She had always been the one controlling everything, and now she was panicking because her plans were falling apart. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to spin her story. She claimed she was saving for a new start, that the cabin was a gift to herself, and that I was just jealous because I couldn't handle her success. She told friends she was getting away from the stress of our marriage, and that Brandon was just a business partner or a guy helping her with her career. She insisted she'd done nothing wrong, but her actions betrayed her. She was constantly on edge, avoiding my eyes and trying to manipulate people around her to believe her lies. One night, I caught her in a blatant lie. I asked her about the offshore accounts, about the transfers, and she snapped at me, saying I was crazy for even doubting her. She accused me of hatting her success, of trying to ruin her, and called me a jealous, insecure husband. That's when I realized she was willing to destroy everything just to keep her secrets. She was so hell-bent on protecting her lies that she didn't care about the damage she was causing, especially not to me. I decided I needed to take more drastic action. I contacted a forensic accountant to dig through every penny, every transaction, every shell company she'd set up. I wanted to know exactly how much she'd stolen, how deep her lies went, and what assets I could claim. The accountant confirmed what I already suspected. She'd hidden millions in assets, including the offshore accounts, the cabin, and other property she'd bought with the stolen money. I was stunned. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a full-blown financial crime. The more I learned, the angrier I became. I'd worked my whole life for this, and she'd been stealing it right under my nose. I started to realize that the woman I married was a master manipulator, capable of lying to everyone, including me, without a second thought. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious, but I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just storm into a courtroom and accuse her without solid evidence. I had to build a case that would stand up in court and hold her accountable. I began documenting everything, every email, every bank statement, every conversation. I even installed a recording device in my office after noticing her secret calls late at night. I knew she was talking to Brandon about the cabin, about money, about covering her tracks. I wanted to catch her in her lies, and I did. One night, I recorded her on the phone, bragging about how she'd outsmarted me and how the cabin was her ticket out of this marriage. Hearing her admit it was a huge wake-up call. It confirmed everything I suspected. I was ready to fight. I told my lawyer that I wanted full custody of our assets, including the cabin, and that I'd fight for a divorce if necessary. I wanted her to pay for her betrayal, not just emotionally, but financially. I wasn't going to let her walk away scot-free, stealing from me and lying to everyone. I also contacted the bank to freeze her accounts and started the legal process of getting a court order to seize her assets. It was a draining process, but I knew it was necessary. Throughout all this chaos, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and a strange sense of clarity. I had loved her once, believed in us, and now I was fighting to reclaim what was mine. Every time I thought about the cabin, about her lies, about Brandon, I felt a burning desire to make her pay for what she'd done. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about protecting myself from the woman I thought I knew. The hardest part was realizing how much I'd trusted her. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the lies, the secret bank accounts, the late-night calls. But I also knew that dwelling on what I missed wouldn't help me now. I had to focus on what I could do next, gather evidence, build my case, and prepare for the inevitable showdown in court. I was determined to come out of this with my dignity intact and my future protected, no matter what it took. The legal battle was intense, and honestly I felt like I was fighting a ghost. Lisa was relentless, trying to deny everything, spinning her lies even more desperately now that her secret was exposed. She insisted the cabin was a gift for herself, that I had no right to claim it, and that I was just a jealous husband who couldn't handle her success. Every time I thought I had her cornered, she'd come back with a new lie, a new excuse, trying to turn the tables on me. It was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't back down. This was about justice, about making her face the consequences of her betrayal. In the courtroom, things moved fast. My lawyer filed for an injunction to freeze all her assets, and the judge granted it. Suddenly, Lisa couldn't access her offshore accounts or sell the cabin without my approval. That seemed to hit her hard. She started to panic, but I stayed calm. I knew this was just the beginning. I had to get a full accounting of her finances, and that meant digging even deeper. The forensic accountant uncovered more shocking details. She transferred millions into multiple offshore accounts, bought other properties under fake names, and even opened secret bank accounts in other countries. This wasn't just a reckless affair. It was a full-scale financial conspiracy. Meanwhile, Lisa's lies kept unraveling. She tried to manipulate friends and family, claiming I was trying to ruin her, accusing me of stalking her and controlling her every move. She even claimed I'd stolen money from her in the past, a lie she kept repeating to make herself look innocent. But the evidence was overwhelming. I had bank statements, emails, recordings, and expert testimony. Every day, I felt a little more vindicated but also more exhausted. This wasn't just a fight over money, it was a fight over my sanity and my future. One of the most shocking moments came when I discovered she had forged my signature on documents related to the cabin and other properties. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. She'd been forging my name for months, perhaps years, to transfer assets without my knowledge. I couldn't believe she'd go that far, to steal, lie, and manipulate her way into a new life with Brandon. I felt betrayed on every level. It was like she'd erased me from her life, forging her way into a future that she'd planned behind my back. I knew I had to act fast. I filed for divorce, citing fraud, financial misconduct, and infidelity. I wanted full custody of our assets and the right to recover what she'd stolen. I also demanded that the court order her to pay back every cent she'd transferred illegally. I wasn't interested in a messy, drawn-out fight. I just wanted her held accountable. I also worked with the bank and law enforcement to track down the offshore accounts, which took weeks, but eventually led to freezing millions of her hidden assets. Throughout this process, I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. I was finally taking control, but I couldn't shake the feeling of losing the woman I once loved. How had everything gone so wrong? How had I missed all the signs? I kept replaying our years together, trying to find the moment I should have seen it coming. But deep down, I knew it was too late for regrets. I had to focus on rebuilding my life, on getting justice, and on moving forward. The court hearings were brutal. Lisa continued to deny everything, trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed I was abusive, that I'd stolen her happiness, and that she only bought the cabin because she needed a fresh start. It was all a lie, but it didn't matter. The evidence was stacked against her. The judge ordered her to pay back the stolen money, forfeit the cabin, and give me full control of our assets. It was a hard-won victory, but it didn't erase the pain of betrayal. That lingered, raw and persistent. In the end, I realized I was stronger than I thought. I'd gone from trusting my wife completely to uncovering her web of lies and theft. I also learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that justice exists, even if it's slow and painful. I decided to focus on rebuilding my life, on healing from the emotional scars, and on making sure I never let someone manipulate me like that again. Looking back, I see how naive I was, how I trusted her blindly. But I also see that I was fortunate to uncover the truth before she could do even more damage. I'm still healing, still trying to put the pieces back together. But I know one thing for sure: I'll never let someone take advantage of me like that again. I've learned that sometimes the biggest lessons come from the deepest betrayals, and you either let them break you or you use them to make you stronger. I choose the latter. The months that followed the court victory were a whirlwind of cleanup and reflection. Lisa had lost everything: her claim to the cabin, her offshore accounts, and her ability to spin her lies anymore. But even as I slowly started to reclaim my life, the emotional scars lingered. Trust, once shattered, is hard to rebuild. I found myself questioning everything, every word she'd ever said, every promise made in the past. It was a bitter lesson, but one I knew I had to learn if I ever wanted to move on. I threw myself into the process of healing. I started going to therapy, which helped me process the betrayal and the anger. I also cut ties with Lisa completely, refusing to let her manipulate or guilt me anymore. I sold the house we shared, took the money from the settlement, and moved into a new place. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I needed that fresh start, away from the ghosts of what we had. Every time I saw the old photos, I felt a pang, reminders of the woman I loved and trusted, now just a stranger who lied and stole from me. As I looked back, I realized how much I'd changed. I was more cautious, more guarded. I'd learned that people can hide their true selves behind a mask, even someone you think you know well. I also learned a lot about money: how fragile it is, how easily it can be manipulated, and how crucial it is to stay vigilant. That lesson cost me dearly, but it also made me smarter. I vowed never to let anyone manipulate my finances or my trust again. One of the hardest parts was dealing with the aftermath of her lies in the broader family and social circles. She spread stories about me, saying I was controlling, jealous, or even abusive, trying to tarnish my reputation. Some people believed her, which hurt even more. I had to accept that not everyone would understand what I'd been through, and that I'd have to live with the stigma of her accusations. But I also found strength in the truth. My closest friends and family knew what really happened, and that was enough to keep me grounded. Over time, I started dating again, but cautiously. I knew I wasn't ready to jump into another relationship immediately, especially not with someone who might hurt me again. But I also realized I was capable of love, of trusting again, just differently this time. I became more selective, more aware of red flags, and more committed to being honest about my feelings and boundaries. I didn't want to repeat the mistakes I'd made with Lisa, and I didn't want to hide any part of myself anymore. Looking back, I see how this nightmare changed me. It forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to stand up for myself, and to realize that sometimes the biggest betrayal comes from those closest to us. But it also showed me that I am resilient. I survived, I fought back, and I learned to rebuild. I'm not the same man I was before, but I'm stronger, wiser, and more cautious. And I know that if I ever face betrayal again, I'll handle it better, because I've already faced the worst and I came out the other side. Most of all, I want to tell anyone reading this who might be going through something similar: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But don't let it define you. Use it as a lesson, a catalyst for growth. Take control of your life, protect your assets, and never ignore the red flags. It's painful, yes, but you're stronger than you think. And in the end, the truth always comes out, even if it takes time. Stay vigilant, stay honest with yourself, and never let anyone manipulate or steal from you. You're worth more than that. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize that betrayal like this leaves a mark no matter how much time passes. It's a scar that reminds me to be more cautious, more aware. I've learned that love and trust are precious, but fragile, and that sometimes the people you think you know best can turn out to be the biggest liars. The pain of losing what I thought was a lifetime of happiness is still fresh, but it's also become a catalyst for my growth. One thing I've come to understand is that revenge isn't about getting even or hurting her back. It's about reclaiming my peace and dignity. I never wanted to stoop to her level, forging signatures or sneaking around, but I also knew I had to stand up for myself. That's why I fought so hard, why I gathered evidence, and why I refused to let her manipulate me anymore. The victory isn't just in the court ruling or the assets I recovered. It's in the fact that I took control of my life back. I refused to be a victim. This whole experience has taught me a brutal lesson about trust, money, and human nature. It's made me more guarded, yes, but also more honest with myself. I now see the importance of safeguarding what's mine, whether that's my heart, my finances, or my future. I've learned that betrayal often comes from the people closest to us, and that the best way to protect yourself is to stay vigilant without losing your capacity to love. There's a strange sense of peace that comes with finally closing this chapter. I don't forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I've come out the other side wounded but wiser. I know now that I can survive the worst kinds of betrayal and still find a way to rebuild. I'm not perfect, and I've still got scars, but I'm moving forward. I've learned to trust again, but more carefully this time. I've learned to value myself more, to stand up for what's right, and to never let anyone steal my future again. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Be vigilant, protect what's yours, and don't ignore the red flags. Love is beautiful, but it's also fragile, and betrayal can come from those you least expect. Trust is earned, not given blindly. And when the worst happens, remember that you're stronger than you think. You can survive, you can fight back, and you can rebuild. Life throws curveballs, but it's how you respond that determines your future. And I promise you, there's always hope, even after the deepest betrayal.